So at some stage you start heading up to Europe, and I believe you picked up Steve Williams as your caddy at one point. And I read
Well, I won
Steve.
that. Yeah, I did. Well, I won that Vic Open, which meant that that was back in the days when you could just turn up on Mondays if you're an Australian, New Zealander. So Frank and I went over there, Frank Nobilo and I, and we just turned up on Monday and played the qualifiers. And if you made it, you played. If you made the cut, you got into the next week. And so I played. I missed 3. Frank missed 2. I missed 3. Then we both made it in Germany. I played 5 weeks and then came home because it was kind of September. And then I went back full time the next year. And then Steve came before me then the year after that, 84.
Now I read in Steve's book, and I think it's a direct quote from you. I think it was your contribution. It was one of those rare moments where the caddy sacked the player, not the player sacked the caddy.
Yeah, it was the year after. He went to caddy for Eduardo Romero, which was probably a good move. Well, it wasn't probably a good move. It was definitely a good move on his behalf. So he was caddying for Greg in Australia, Terry Gale in Asia. He caddied for Michael King in Europe. Then he caddied for me. And then he went to Eduardo, then Finchy, I think. And then Greg hired him full time in 87, I think. 87, yeah. So he did Greg until Greg fired him in probably the only time Greg got fired, really. Steve got fired in after the Masters in 89. Yep. They did a few more weeks and then Greg fired Steve, which was one of the dumber things Greg did. Maybe the dumbest ever, probably.
Right. So you're up in Europe. You're qualifying on Monday, but obviously you're making those cuts. So you're probably just focusing on the weekends. And then was it 84 you had your first win up in Europe?
Only one, yeah. Won that. That was the first week Steve caddy for me. Oh, okay. So I remember there was a little range there in Biarritz, and we were just walking to the first tee, and he said, I've watched you play a bit. He said, your concentration levels are hopeless. He said, all I want you to do this week is pay attention to every shot. I don't care how you play, but you've got to pay attention to every single shot and concentrate properly. Which was kind of Steve was pretty sure of himself. I was 26. He was probably 21 or 2. He was pretty sure of his own ability then, that was why he was such a good caddy. And he did a great job. We got off to a decent start, and it was an easy course, but I shot 61 on Saturday, which made a big difference.
Right. It's interesting you talk about Steve, because I've enjoyed chatting to a couple of the older guys in the club that back when Paraparaumu used to kids used to caddy on the course, etc. And one of these older gentlemen said Steve was only 12 at the time, but when he told you to pull a club, you took that club, and if you didn't take that club, you incurred the wrath of this young 12-year-old.
Well, which just goes back to why Greg fired him. They got to the last hole at Augusta in '89, and Steve tried to get him hit a 3-wood off the tee, and he went with a 1-iron, so we left himself a long way back. And he told me this story, and I know because he's caddied for me. Greg said, what do you think? And Steve said, it's a 5-iron shot. When Steve says it's a 5-iron shot, it's a 5-iron shot. And sorry, I've got that wrong. He said it's a 4-iron shot. Yeah. And Greg had hit the easy 4-iron in 86 and hit it up into the crowd. So in the back of his mind, he doesn't want to do that again. He doesn't want to go with the easy shot again. He wants to go with a hard 5. And Stevie said, Greg, it's a 4-iron. It's not a 5. You won't get there. Steve said he ripped this 5, just hammered it. And it came up about 3 yards short of the green on the mound there, ran back down the hill. But when Steve said, I can just see Steve there saying, Greg, it's a 4-iron shot. Give me the 5. And he bogeyed that hole and missed the Hoke Faldo playoff by a shot.
Yeah,
if ever I was in that situation, and when Steve said it's a 4-iron shot, it wasn't a 5-iron ever, and it wasn't ever a 3-iron. It was always a 4-iron, and he was always right. When we went weeks when we would never hit the wrong club. That's why he was such a good caddy. You would never make a mental error or a stupid mistake, and you would never hit the wrong club.
It's interesting because I played a game of golf with him at Paraparaumu just before Christmas, and we were just discussing there on the ninth hole, and he lamented the total reliance on TrackMan these days, and the modern professionals who train with TrackMan, they don't do anything without TrackMan. They carry around, these massive books with grids and things determining what kind of yardages, and Steve said it kind of did his head in to a certain extent.
Well, you know that when Steve was 12 years old, he didn't have a yardage book. He was just looking at the green like I did when I was 12 caddying. He'd look at the shot and he'd say, it's a 4-iron shot. And he knew how to judge the look of a shot by eye. So you know that when you stand on the 16th at Paraparaumu or the 5th hole, you know what it looks like. The 16th hole would know when it looks like a 9-iron shot. It doesn't look like a wedge. It doesn't look like an 8-iron. So you get a sense of what a 9-iron shot looks like. So Steve knew how to caddy, and he could judge a shot by what it looked like to his eye. I mean, now, I go with Sue O, who I play a lot with, great player on the LPGA tour. She almost can't play without a rangefinder. So we go out there and just put the rangefinder away and just look at it and pick a club and hit the shot. So it's the same thing that Steve's talking about is, kids grow up now and they don't know how to judge the look of a shot without knowing first how far it is. So if it's 175 metres, it's a 5-iron shot. It doesn't matter if it's it might be a little 4 or a cut 3 or a hard 6, and 175 5-iron. So that's how they pull a club based on a number. And Steve learned how to caddy and play by doing it completely the opposite. So there's a way for both. I mean, clearly it's always good to have a number in your head, and it's much easier to pull a club when you've got a number and you know exactly how far it is. But you don't want to lose the feel of and the instinct of looking at a target and feeling how far to hit the ball with your hands. And of course, places like Paraparaumu or Bumbugle or Portsea or Bowen Heads or the national, the windy courses here, the number's only the start. That's the first part of a 3 or 4-part process in pulling a club, where you want to land the ball, the trajectory, the flight, the force. Now that's what a rangefinder won't tell you. It just gives you a number.
Later on in the interview, I'm going to talk about a 126-metre hole in a certain club that you drew that day, but we'll do that later in the interview. But it probably clearly demonstrates the point you're making there right now. Mike, so you're playing professional golf, and I'm thinking 1984, after what you've just said, was possibly your first visit to Paraparaumu?
I didn't play that year. That was the Corey one, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
I didn't play because I don't know why I didn't play. Well, I'll tell you why I didn't play it. Because there will be one of 2 reasons. The first was that I wasn't exempt in Europe in 84. I was still pre-qualifying because I just missed the top 60 the year before. And that week, Steve caddied for me. I wouldn't have played except that because we were friends with David and Linda Frost, and they took that week off to go to Spain for a holiday, and would have joined them except that I was still pre-qualifying. I made the cut, so I had to go and play. But that year, I played 23 out of 24 weeks in 17 countries. And I remember 3 playing the last hole at the Royal Dublin in the Irish Open. And Steve said, I think you need to take a week off. So he was right. And then I had a week off and went back, and I played pretty much all the way through to the Australian Open. And then I got an invitation to play the Casio tournament in Japan, which was the week after the Australian Open. So that was either the same week as the New Zealand Open, or it was the week before it or something. But I was done. I mean, it was late in the year. I played 40 plus tournaments. Yeah. So I think I was I can't face going to New Zealand.
So what was your first?
So it was either because I was in Japan, or it was I played 23 out of 24 weeks and 43 weeks of the year that I was kind of done. I was worn out.
So what was your first trip to Paraparaumu then? Was it 1988?
I guess it was 88, although I think I've got a feeling it wasn't the first time I played there, which doesn't make sense. But when I got there, I had a feeling I'd been there before. So did we play anything before that? Just 84 and 88?
Correct, yeah.
We played Russley in 86, right, I think. And I guess it was my first time there, but it seems weird because I felt like I knew the course better.
So so 1988, you did line up in the field. You shoot 65 on the last day in conditions. So you shoot 65 on the last day. You're sitting in the clubhouse. Your leader, Ian Stanley's still out on the course. You described that round of golf that you played that day as one of the best rounds of golf you've ever played.
Yeah, probably the best in terms of. It was a horrendous day. I mean, it was blowing a hurricane. I think maybe one of the guy broke 670, maybe. I mean, 168, I think 68. So it was one of those crazy days when you're just trying to shoot par, really. It would have been a good score. I remember the second hole was a 1-iron, third hole was a 1-iron. I don't remember the fifth. And I remember 17. Sorry, 16.
Yeah.
So 16 was a 4-iron. So that was how windy it was. So it was a crazy day. And I don't know, I had a good, again, it was like that Vic Open. I had a great swing thought. Jeff Wagner, and we'd played together the last round the week before at Titirangi, and I hadn't played very well. And he gave me a little kind of swing tip. It was just about swinging longer. I went down a Paraparaumu. I tried to swing a bit longer, and it was just a feel, really. And I played decently that week, the first 3 days. Nothing great, but decently. And I just played this crazy round on Sunday. So I don't remember ever. Stan was a long way ahead. What did he win by, 2 or 3 in the end, I think?
2 or 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember thinking I had a really good shot at winning it, maybe, but.
He had a little moment behind the 17th green. That was the first Open I ever went to see, and I remember standing behind the 17th green, and he'd gone over the back, and you could kind of see that it's a difficult up and down, and the pressure started to go on, and you saw his demeanour as a young fellow. I saw a guy's demeanour change quite instantly, and he became quite testy with the cable boy that was trying to gather in the cable in front of him. And look, hey. He got up, he made a 5, and I think he birdied the last hole in the end, and it was comfortable. Yeah. But
last hole was a gimme. It was only I don't remember what I hit, but it was probably only a drive and a 9 on 8 on. But I remember 17 was tricky that day because it was a bit across the wind, and I had a good shot in there with a 9 iron that landed, I thought, perfectly, sort of somewhere near the middle of the green and went over the back. So it was easy to go over the back that day. Where I got up and down, made 4, but it was and then I played with Vaughan Summers. And I played really well, but it was a bouncy, windy, tricky day. And I hit one fairway. How's that for a stat? I hit one fairway for the day. And I drove the ball pretty well, but it was, you know what, those fairways, those crumpled fairways, and how they were in big winds. It was like I was driving I was a straight hitter, really. I was one of the straightest hitters around, but I remember hitting on one cut fairway for the day. I mean, lots of them on the edges because you'll just trickle off the sides. And that was Vaughn counted up. He said, "Shit, you only hit one fairway today." I went through. I said, "You're right." I've got no idea which one it was, but it was, which is perhaps as a, I remember playing some, Roy Pullman used to set up the New Zealand Open. I don't know if he'd set that one up, but I remember playing at Shirley in 1982, and Pullman used to go to the US Open every year and come back and try and replicate the silliness of the US Open. Some of Shirley was, rock hard clay and bouncy and narrow fairways and rough, and it was a bizarre setup, really. But Paraparaumu certainly wasn't a course that needed narrow fairways.